Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Wilson. I use he, him pronouns, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this service at the First Universalist Church of Rochester. If this is your first time here this morning, we especially welcome you and thank you for making it to our worshiping community. We invite you and everyone to remain after the service for coffee hour in the Clara Barton Lounge through either of these doors or online in the same Zoom link. There's also a visitor's form on the back of your order of service, or by clicking the link in the chat. We ask you to fill this out so that we can stay connected with you beyond what we can this Sunday morning, and you can stay up to date as to what's happening here at the church. If you have a big joy or sorrow in your heart this morning, as a reminder, we ask you to fill it out in the notebook here on the chancel, or in the Zoom chat any time before the chalice is lit. So now is a good time to do that. A couple announcements. We have some things happening today after service. The Eco-Justice meeting in the chalice room, number 23 upstairs. The newcomer circle in the minister's office upstairs. So if you are new to our faith or to this church and you want to learn more, come and see us after service and we can talk with you about that. We also have the Fellowship Club this Tuesday, and volunteers are still needed for the free breakfast plus services on May 28th. It's a simple, short commitment with a big impact. So if you're interested, see Bill or Elizabeth or even myself. All right, before we take a moment to turn towards our neighbor, let's say hello to our wonderful online community. Let's wave towards the Progress Pride flag in the corner there where the camera is. If you're online, pop a greeting into the chat. We're happy you're joining us this morning. And if you're here in person, let's take this moment to turn towards our neighbor and say hello.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. Hello, we are your stewardship co-chairs this year. Kathleen Schaefer here, whose pronouns are she, her, and I'm Adam Duran. My pronouns are he, they. It has been a pleasure to serve this year with the incredible support of the seasoned veterans on the stewardship committee. As we look forward to the future of our church, we, as a committee, have been reflecting on what it truly means to sustain a congregation. Stewardship isn't just about giving, although that's great, but it's the practice of nurturing the roots that allow our ministry, our music, our outreach, everything about us to flourish. We are here to ensure that our congregation remains capable of supporting every member or friend who walks through our doors. With this year's stewardship theme, Faith is a Forest, we've been thinking a lot about how our support systems work, not just in a budget, but in the natural world around us.
So, a few weeks ago, Reverend Eileen gave us a brief biology class on how fungus help the forests by communicating and supporting the trees. So, in Google also describes fungus as critical in the forest ecosystem by forming vast networks of fungus to communicate and connecting trees for sharing resources, improve the nutrient uptake, and enhance the resilience to environmental stress. All of you are that support, like the good fungus in the forest, to our church. So we thank you, and the stewardship thanks you so very much for your pledges that keeps us vital in the community and here in our beloved church. Also, a big thank you to the Finance Committee and for their support and guidance to the Stewardship Committee. So I'd like to ask those that are on Finance and the Stewardship Committee to raise your hand so we can see who you all are. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And, by the way, if you haven't gotten around to sending your pledge in yet, it is not too late. Thank you.
Y'all didn't know you were going to be called a mushroom this morning. I've been called worse. I want to invite you now to rise in body or in spirit for our first hymn, number 318 in the gray hymnal. And I do encourage you to use a hymnal if you've got one, because we have one wonky slide that you're not going to be able to read. If you don't have a hymnal in front of you, feel free to make up those words or hum along or just sway back and forth for those 4 lines.
In the 90s, I was teaching at Greece Arcadia High School when my friend, a school counselor, shared a program with me. The National Coalition Building Institute, NCBI, developed workshops to improve leadership skills through understanding diverse groups of people, aiming at reducing prejudice. One component of the workshop was developing skills that would help us interrupt language that was hurtful to others. By learning and understanding this method, we could be better allies to diverse groups of people. The process was not easy, but the outcomes could be profound. The central concept was, we do not change people's minds. We change their hearts. In this model, after the person makes a prejudicial comment, our response is to ask a question. What we want to find out is what is the story behind this comment that has formed this belief. People develop beliefs in many ways, and often they don't question or even think about them or how their ideas came about. They just speak them as truth. We are not going to change their minds that the story didn't happen by giving facts or telling them why they should not believe as they do. The key is listening to them. In this process, it is very important to listen, trying not to think of responses to their ideas, trying hard to keep our judgment of the ideas out of the listening process. Judgment can often make people angry, which defeats our purpose and can shut the person down. The purpose is to listen for understanding, establishing eye contact, keeping a neutral tone of voice, and maintaining proximity to the storyteller are helpful, as is the use of first-person pronouns. The pronoun you in the hierarchy of pronouns is accusatory. You did it. It's your fault. How to shut down a person, right? It's the finger. Using the pronoun we to include the person and oneself keeps the judgmental tone out of the conversation. Tell me more. It allows the story to continue. People need to feel heard. Our listening helps create the space for the belief holder to think about what they have said. The feeling is what we are after in this conversation. It is the heart of the conversation because that is what we want to change. Facts don't change feelings. And it is the feelings that are more powerful than truth. So, we aim not to change people's minds, but to change people's hearts. And maybe, just maybe, we can use this to change the world. Come, let us worship together. As Nancy Gady comes forward to light our chalice at First Universalist, and you light a chalice in your own homes, please join me in our chalice lighting words, spoken in unison. May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please rise in body or in spirit for our affirmation of faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall go into harmony with the source and meaning of life, thus to be covenant with each other and with all. I invite you now into the spiritual practice of generosity. The good work of this church is funded by the gifts you give. Part of that good work is the ministry of our religious education volunteers. RE volunteers work with our Minister for Lifespan Faith Development on children's and family programming on Sunday mornings and throughout the week. We are particularly grateful now at the start of Teacher Appreciation Week for everyone who teaches our children. Would any religious education volunteers present raise your hands, here or online? We are so grateful for your contributions to the life of this church and the needs of the world. Let us give with grateful hearts this morning. Please place your offering in the offering basket and give online by scanning the QR code on the laminated sheet in your pew. This is also a great time to place visitors' forms in the offering basket. For folks online, please click the link in the chat to give to First Universalist Church. Thank you for your generosity. This morning's offering will now be gratefully received.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Eileen, and now it's time for a story. And if you're a small person or even a larger person and you want to listen to this story up close, I invite you to come sit up front for the story now or any time during the story. You are grown-ups and children, allowed to move your bodies when you need to. This is a story, a folk tale from India that I know from the title White Wings Escape. It's an old, old story from ancient Hinduism and also shows up as a Buddhist folk tale because Buddhism has its roots in Hinduism in India. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, deep in the forest, there was a colony of birds. Now these birds mostly lived on their own. They might have paired up in families now and then or hung out with their friends from time to time, but mostly they were solitary birds. The forest was full of birds, but the birds lived one by one, all alone. And there were hunters in the forest too, human hunters. And every now and then, the hunters, using their hunter techniques like bows and arrows, or dart guns would get a bird for their dinner. And the birds knew that this was part of the circle of life in the forest, and they were fairly resigned to it until the hunters developed some new technology. They started weaving massive nets that they would hang from the trees, and whenever the birds would congregate, the hunters would drop a net over a whole group of birds, 10 or 20 or 50 birds at a time. The hunters got a little greedy, didn't they? They started taking more and more birds at a time, and the birds, what do you think the birds did? Well, I'll tell you what the birds did. The birds started bickering among themselves. They started fighting amongst each other about what was the best way to get away from this new hunter technology. And they started to try and trick each other to be the bird that escaped from the net while everybody else was caught. That became the game of the birds. And how do you think that went for them? Yeah, as Ewan said, not great. Well, there was one bird who was a very wise ring-tailed dove with white wings, and his name was White Wings, which is convenient. White Wings had an idea. He thought, maybe if we stopped being such solitary birds and we worked together, we might be able to get out from under these nets. And so he started to try to recruit birds to his side to help him. And the birds were skeptical because they figured all they had to do was be a little bit faster than the slower birds, and they wouldn't get caught under the net, right? But White Wings tried his best. And wouldn't you know it, one day, White Wings and a bunch of other birds were pecking at some seeds in the dirt when a hunter's net fell on the whole group of them. There were maybe 100 birds under this big, giant net. And under the net, White Wings started working even harder to get the birds to cooperate. He said, "We have to trust each other. Can you trust each other? Can we work together?" And he went from bird to bird underneath the net, scurrying around underneath. And he got all the birds to agree to trust each other. And he said, "When I say the word, you tell the bird next to you, and they'll tell the bird next to them, and then we'll all know when it's the right time." And he waited until the hunters glanced away, and then White Wings said, "It's time." And the birds next to him said, "It's time." And then the birds next to them said, "It's time." And the message spread across this whole group of birds, and then all at once the birds flew up into the air with the net over top of them, because one bird couldn't lift the net on his own, but all of the birds could. And then White Wing, as they're hovering with this net covering them, said, "It's time," for a second time. And the birds next to him said, "It's time." And the birds next to them said, "It's time." And then all of the birds tilted to the side, like a big murmuration of swallows all at once. The whole group of birds tilted, and the net fell to the ground, and the birds flew away. But they didn't just fly away and go their separate ways. They flew throughout the forest, and they taught all the other birds how to work in solidarity, so that those hunters' nets were no longer such a great technology for the hunters, because the birds knew how to get free from them from that day on. The hunters did not get trapped in the net. Importantly, I think, the birds got free without hurting anybody else. And this is the end of our story. And now it is time to go to religious education, to children's worship, if you're heading upstairs with Miss Carol, while we sing our doxology. I invite us now into the time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from a more heart-centered place. And friends, we know so much is going on in our world today, and if you have sorrows or joys to share on behalf of our national or our global community, you are encouraged to do so today and always. And as Patty places stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and the sorrows of our community this morning. We share with Susan a concern about poor relations with NATO, and with Hal, a sorrow for our relationship to the 8 billion fellow humans on this planet. We share a joy with Ed and the rest of the House Committee to have so many dedicated people helping with the workday yesterday. We share a joy for a granddaughter having finally decided on the University of Pennsylvania for college, and a sorrow at remembering 4 students killed by the National Guard in 1970, on May 4th, 1970. We share a joy with Lois and Greg, who are thrilled that 1,500 dogs were freed from the Ridgeland facility. A joy with John that 4 years and 1 month ago, he was saved from homelessness. And today, we also share in a community ritual to honor the many joys and sorrows that we bring into this space, whether we've read them aloud or keep them in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. So in a moment, those who are here in person are invited to come forward and drop stones into the bowls at the front. If you need to remain seated, you can raise your hand, and someone will come to you with a bowl and some stones to drop in it. And if you're joining us online, we invite you to drop a heart emoji into the meeting chat rather than a stone. So let us join in this collective ritual of honoring the joys and sorrows of us all now. Now the circle of our care is drawn larger. May it increase forevermore. I invite us now into a moment of prayer and centering, followed by some shared silence. So let us start with a deep breath, and maybe a sigh if you need it. Perhaps your feet find the floor, your hand finds an armrest. You find a way to feel held by this good earth, by this good church that holds us in all our celebrations and our pain. As we offer this prayer by Jan Richardson, may the table be wide, and the welcome be wide, and the arms will open wide to gather us in, and our hearts will open wide to receive. And we will come as children who trust there is enough, and we will come unhindered and free, and our aching will be met with bread, and our sorrow will be met with wine. And we will open our hands to the feast without shame, and we will turn toward each other without fear, and we will give up our appetite for despair, and we will taste and know of delight. We will become bread for a hungering world, and we will become drink for those who thirst. And the blessed will become the blessing, and everywhere will be the feast. Amen. Blessed be. May it be so. Our hymn of contemplation is number 188. Come, come, whoever you are.
And it is a round, so you're... Yes. Let's sing it all together once, and then... Voice 4. I'm supposed to be speaking into this, duh. 1, 2, 3, 4, more or less. We're not going to keep track too carefully. But everybody sing it through once together, and then maybe twice as a round, because it's pretty short. It won't take too much time. Who has an E flat? I have an E flat. Okay, everybody together. Come, come, whoever you are, wander, worship, around me, because it's forever of despair. Come yet and come. Come, come, whoever you are, wander.
So my cousin and his partner have 4 kids, 2 teenagers and 2 toddlers. And their life is, as you might imagine, a little chaotic at times. And they have this thing that they do that I love, especially when they're navigating a particularly intense or chaotic moment of partnership, where when they feel the urge to bicker or belittle or grumble at each other, they look their partner in the eyes and they say, "Same team?" And the other, sometimes after a big deep breath, replies, "Same team." It's a shorthand for reminding one another that in the middle of whatever mess they're in, they've decided to be partners. They are committed to being on the same side. It's a way of affirming, especially when it's tempting, that they will not let the mess or stress pit them against each other. So when they're on vacation, making their way through a foreign public transit without losing their luggage or their temper or their toddler, they look at one another and they go, same team, same team. Whether they're in the middle of potty training or someone's throwing a tantrum or learning to drive or they're deciding what to have for dinner, or even when they have big fundamental gaps in the values of their shared life, they always remind one another that they begin from the same place, as the same team. And I think at this particularly divisive, chaotic, scary, and raging moment in our collective history, we need a little same teamness. Let me say from the start, and probably over and over throughout, that this is not a find a place to meet in the political middle sermon. There is no middle ground between fascism and not fascism, oppression and liberation that I think we should inhabit. But in our striving for liberation and nothing less, I do think we sometimes lose sight of whose side we are on. We engage in a construction of the other, of the enemy, that is not useful except to make ourselves feel a kind of vague superiority alongside all our fear. Much of the history of the capital C Church has been spent sussing out who is inside or outside the boundaries of salvation, who gets saved, who is included in divine liberation. Cyprian of Carthage declared in 240-something CE, don't quote me on that date, that there could be no salvation outside of the church. No one gets saved without participation in community, he said, in the body of Christ, as he put it. And man, did we hold on to that for a long time. European Protestants set the boundary around individual hearts, at first anyway. Divine liberation was a matter of belief, not participation. And our Universalist ancestors decided salvation had to be all-encompassing, unbounded, taking the boundaries away, right? And it feels good to think about a perfectly equitable liberation, a God who takes no sides. It feels especially good when we consider it from the side of power, which so many of us do. I am not about to tell you I'm not a Universalist, just FYI. But a perfectly equitable universalism is not what I've had in mind all these years. I don't know about you. Liberation theology turns that universalism sideways. Still for everyone, but it has to start somewhere. And that somewhere has to be the margins, the sidelines. It imagines a God that is for everyone and takes sides. A love that moves not with perfect equality, but toward need. And in order to talk about liberation theology, which you know I'm going to do, it's about to get disturbingly Catholic up here for a minute. For those of you with religious trauma who came from that tradition, bear with me. There is so much that I proudly carry with me from the Catholic farm worker immigrants and the Sisters of St. Joseph who raised me. And here I am in this pulpit. Like many of you, it was not an institution where my theology or my queerness or my gender or my loudmouth fit. So I am holding on to some of that inheritance, but yes, I see your hurt. I'm with you. In fancy seminary language, we talk about the premise of Central American Catholic liberation theology as the preferential option, which does sound like a sports betting term, I admit it. And it makes more sense in Spanish, where opción means a set priority, a choice predetermined or made long ago. It means a divine preference for the most vulnerable, a love that sides with those whom Gustavo Gutierrez called whoever is insignificant, marginalized, unimportant, needy, despised, and defenseless. Liberation theologian John Sobrino amended Cyprian's boundary to declare there is no salvation outside of the poor. He did not mean that liberation is only for people who are poor or vulnerable. What he means is that no liberation can exist for any of us who side with power over vulnerability. No liberation can exist for those of us who refuse solidarity. We become imprisoned by our own refusal to take sides. In a theology of liberation, God takes sides. In a theology of liberation, we are called to take sides. First and foremost in this work, we need to position ourselves in alignment, in proximity, in solidarity with marginalized people, with the actual people most affected and impacted by systems of power. Because if we look around and they're not with us, are we really able to say we're with them? If they're leading and we're not following, whose team are we acting like we're on? And in spite of my admittedly terrible understanding of sports metaphors, I do use the word team intentionally here. We can't do anti-oppression work from the sidelines. We are called to be on the team, not safely in here rooting for the anti-oppression team out there, cheering them on, but able to pick up and go home whenever we're tired. We are called to be in the game, because anyone on the sidelines in the struggle for justice is on the side of injustice. In Korean liberation theology, the most important character in the Christian Bible is the crowd. It's a way of thinking that pays careful attention not to the hero of the story, but the location of the preaching, teaching, feeding, healing, love in those sacred stories. That's the preferential option, right? The team that divinity aligns itself with. It's the location of transformation where all the hope and change and resurrection is sown. And the thing about crowds, about solidarity, that's hard to swallow in our time, is that the crowd represents every person vulnerable to the might of empire, not just the ones that we like, not just those who think and look and love like us. The crowd, by its nature, can't be gatekept. Even those who cheer for Caesar in the streets while they starve in his occupation are part of the crowd. Those who think the empire, the weight of which is crushing them, just needs a few tweaks to function well. They're part of the crowd, part of that team. And in our opposition to the might of empire, the crush of tyranny, we cannot allow our neighbor not very far out of town who relies on a farm bill but has a hand-painted MAGA sign on their barn to become our enemy. That neighbor, same team. Your chronically online friend from high school who's been red-pilled by the manosphere, same team. Your cousin who slid down the pipeline from essential oils straight into fascism, same team. And let me clarify again. By same team, I do not always mean same values. I do not mean we have the same goals or will be doing the same work. By solidarity, I never mean that we should inch rightward until we find common ground with fascism. I mean that we are in this thing together, whether any of us like it or not. And all of us who are vulnerable to the might of power are in this thing together. Whether our sights are on the same goalposts or not, we are on the same team. Because the crush of our particular empire will come for all of us eventually, even if it promises some of us supremacy or security in the short term. The force of that empire resides in the hands of so few rich and powerful people that whenever we say the rest of us are on the same team, I fear inevitably we are picturing far too small a crowd. Because those powerful folks have their sights set on particularly vulnerable people right now. Our queer and trans siblings, our immigrant siblings, our people of color siblings, their vocal opposition, but nearly all of us will be vulnerable eventually if we aren't already. That's how tyranny works. It comes for everyone eventually. And that means this team is enormous. If you rely on a paycheck to live, same team. If one or two health emergencies could bankrupt you, same team. The 75% of rural working class Americans who voted for all this, same team. The people who didn't vote at all, same team, y'all. Cops, ICE officers, I'm so sorry, same team. Pause, listen. What I do not mean to say here is that we should cooperate with their work, that we should let them in the door without a warrant, please don't. I don't mean that we should support an establishment of an American Gestapo. What I mean is that there will always be people who lick the boots of empire even while those boots are on their neck. But we have to abolish their work without abolishing their humanity. Because when we do that, when we refuse to see ourselves in solidarity because we derive delight from superiority, we lose whatever power the crowd can have. When we diminish anyone's humanity by refusing to believe their hearts can be redeemed, we diminish our own. We refuse our own redemption. Because even if their values and priorities suck, they deserve a just world. And we can't have one without them, without knowing that we are on the same team. And I'm not talking about some when they go low, we go high strategy. We have seen how well that works. Our petty pleasure in considering ourselves to be higher, smarter, better people who share our vulnerability but don't share our values is nothing more than a rewritten version of supremacy. And reordered hierarchies cannot be what liberation looks like. It has to look like a world where no one is high while others are low, where we are all on the same team. Because we have to remember this is not some new and sudden evil spreading across the land. This is the long sorting out of generations of moral injury that's incurred when you steal a continent, do a genocide, hold tens of millions of people in bondage. And I know I sound like I'm asking us to zoom out for perspective, but I think it's just as useful to zoom in, to get so close to the human heart that we understand how alike each one is to the other. That we can understand evil has always been the work of a system, not a people. The work of a very few powerful people whose power only comes from the inaction of millions of others whose tender hearts believe themselves to be alone. We are so many more of us than we've been imagining on the same team. And in solidarity, we can see more clearly. We can see that we need to take sides with those most vulnerable to the might of systems of power and understand that showing up to do so means becoming part of a team that could include all of us. Will include all of us, I really do believe. Even though we have been sold the lie of different teams more aggressively than our pyramid scheming cousin could ever dream of. My ancestors, like many of yours, came here from places colonized by the apparatus of white supremacy, and in a generation or two traded in their names, their language, their stories, and their songs, their unique histories, the particularity of their very faith for entry into the cult of whiteness. We got recruited to a different team's philosophy and sold out our ability to be on the same side as love. White people, I'm talking to us. My ancestors, and many of yours, made a deal with the devil that has erased generations of cultural understanding, erased any remnant of indigeneity, erased all sense of embodied belonging to place, in exchange for the feeling that we are on a small and winning team. The myth of separateness, of us versus them, is the theft of our capacity to synthesize our grief and our guilt, our loneliness and our longing for a better world, all for the illusion of security in a world that can only ever be fully inhabited through vulnerability. Friends, that petty satisfaction at being right is nothing but a stumbling block on our way to being good. And goodness has to include solidarity. If Jesus thought that the redemption for Rome's tax collectors was possible, if we want to call ourselves Universalists, we have to believe that the hearts of those we think are on some imaginary other side can be redeemed. We have to believe that every one of us can be redeemed, but not a single one of us alone. And when I say, remember we're on the same team, I don't mean to tell you stop being mad. Please be mad, get agitated, disrupt this. Our anger is reasonable. Anger is the righteous response to injustice, but it is not our neighbor down the road who we're angry with. It is not the rural families in Idaho whose Medicaid has been cut to shreds. It is not the 55% of retirement-age men who voted for Trump and are watching the value of their 401ks teeter on the edge of collapse without a safety net beneath them. We have to be able to hold the dissonance that they are wrong and they are not our enemies. Our anger is justified. Its target should be precise. Our only enemy in this struggle is the evil of empire itself, and all of us have laid down with this enemy in work and in war, in our homes and in our public squares for generations. The only hope of getting out of that toxic relationship is to learn a moral mutuality, not replicate the authoritarianism of empire in our relationships of care. To be on the same team, we need to get rid of the illusion of our separateness, our devotion to supremacy. We need to build our capacity to view the world through the lens of belonging and reciprocity, rather than transaction and debt. We need a radical reciprocity of understanding in culture, in the sense of belonging we derive from being with one another, radically with one another, in the way that we promise every week when we hear one another's joys and sorrows and promise that they are held by this good church. Friday night, at the Labor Council rally in the park across the street, I ran into an old friend. We have lots of overlapping connections in organizing circles, but we hadn't seen each other much since we were both active in Rochester Red and Black back in our relative youth. And he asked how things were going for me here at First Universalist. And he said, "They're good people over there, aren't they?" I knew immediately what he was thinking of. We had collaborated during the Occupy campouts in that same park 15 years ago. And lots of churches preached about it at the time. Some felt an affinity for it, lots were opposed. Some didn't understand what those wacky kids were up to. But this church brought us hot soup at night, let us use its clean bathrooms, walked between tents handing out cups of coffee and dreaming about a better future together with us, radically with us. This is a church that has always been called to take sides, to show up, to know whose team we're on, and what a big team it is indeed. May it always be so, and amen. Friends, would you rise in your bodies or in your spirits and sing together our closing hymn, number 1017, Building a New Way. I invite you to remain standing if you are, as Patty extinguishes our chalice flame this morning. And let us read together the words printed on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts, with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in, until we are together again. And as we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand over your heart. If you're joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view and look upon the faces of those here with you today. And for those of us in the room, let us take a moment to look at everyone gathered. I offer as a benediction these words from the Reverend Sean Neil Barron. People don't want to be convinced. They want to feel claimed by a we that doesn't dissolve who they are but magnifies it into a shared power. Everyone is invited to join us for coffee hour immediately following the service. If you're headed to Newcomer Circle, I'll meet you in the Clara Barton Lounge. And if you are in Zoom, you can stay right in the current Zoom room. Many thanks today for Howard and Charlie for filling in on music, and for our choir for rehearsing this song at the very last minute. Our postlude today is very special to me, so much so that its title is permanently inscribed on my body. And I promised Howard I would give it some context. It is a song that became popular in the early 1900s among suffragists and the women's labor movement in textile factories. And it asks us to think about the breadth of solidarity and the breadth of our dreams. It calls us to dream not just of survival, but a world of beauty and abundance together.